Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes. We are with Liberty Lass, our level 4 willpower or energy melee willpower brute, and she's got a couple of powers, and we're on a story arc. And one of the things I didn't really talk about or really do much of last time that I think I want to do this episode is just talk a little bit about City of Heroes and how it works. I've seen a bunch of videos about like how to play City of Heroes pop up in my feed now, I guess, because I made one. And I realized that there are a bunch of people who maybe didn't try this game because it was illegal or whatever, and maybe they'd never played it before, and they want to get some advice on how to play the game or how to build characters. So we'll do a little bit of that. I do want to point out that I try to play this game despite how new some of the stuff is in Homecoming. I try to play this game as much the way it played when it first came out as possible because that's my favorite form of the game. Even though I am using willpower, which is not one of the original powers. I don't use a lot of the newer stuff, and so that's why I threw out some of the enhancements that they automatically give you and that sort of thing. Oh, look at this. We have a single origin enhancement, so this is absolutely perfect for what I wanted to talk about. So let's talk about how this works. There are three types of powers in City of Heroes that have names, right? And each power has its own name, which is usually some sort of a self-description, like high pain tolerance. The left-hand side is your primary power set. The primary power set is what your character was designed to be able to do, right? In this case, energy melee, that's your main power. Then you have a secondary power set. And the secondary power set is good. You're quite good with it, but you're not as powerful with it as you are with your primary. So in this case, our secondary power set is willpower. So in the case of the brute archetype, the primary power set is a melee offensive power set. In this case, energy melee. So the character punches you with like energy punches. And if we look at the detailed information on energy melee, we can see a whole bunch of stuff that's probably super confusing if you've never looked at it. So there's the average damage it does. In this case, it does about 22 damage to the enemy. There's the activation time, which is 1.33 seconds. So it takes about 1.33 seconds for it to animate. And so since you're doing 22 points of damage, but it takes a second and 33 hundredths to punch with the animation, you're doing 16.58 damage basically per second, right? And then you have the damage per cast cycle. What that means is since it takes 6 seconds for the power to recharge, you can only do the 22 points of damage every basically 7.33 seconds. 6 seconds to recharge and then 1.33 to do the animation. And if you divide that out, that's about 3 damage per second if you just were to sit there and hit barrage, wait, 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 barrage, wait, 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 barrage. And so these are just different ways to look at the damage. I normally just look at the average damage. How much damage does a blow do? There's also the endurance cost. When you use powers, it costs endurance. You have 100 endurance normally by default, and it'll slowly regenerate over time. And the accuracy is 1.00x. Remember, base to hit in City of Heroes is 75%, and then that's multiplied by whatever the accuracy is. So in this case, it'd be 75%. And then, as I said last time, they give you a little bit of buff when you're low level just to make it easier for you. The power type is click. That means when you click it, it works. The other possibilities are toggle or inherent. The target type is a single enemy within 7 feet, single target. And it attacks against the defenses of melee and energy. So if it's something defends you against melee attacks, it will defend you against this. And if it defends you against energy attacks, it will defend you against this since it's an energy melee attack, right? The power also has a 10% chance to do a 2 magnitude stun for about 5 seconds. And then it will do some damage over time. If you use Fiery Embrace, it does extra damage over time. And then it will do minus 20% to healing on the target. That means that the target for 15 seconds is reduced in its healing abilities. And there's some other stuff here. Let's not get into all the different effects, right? There's lots of different effects where it can confuse the enemy, and this is debuffing their ability to resist the confusion. Let's not get into all that. Most of that's not going to have a practical game effect. This is a really complicated power to start with. So that's kind of how the power works. And each power has its own ability. So this one does 13 damage, right? Also has a chance of doing a stun. So what happens is if you have no stun defense, there's a chance you'll get stunned from this. Once you hit a 3 magnitude, I think that's when you actually get the stun. So with this character, if we punch, and then within 5 seconds we do another punch, you've layered 2 and 2, which would be 4 magnitude, and that should be enough to stun them. And you'll see as we get our defenses in, we will have magnitude resistance against stun. So when you get hit and you have resistance, that blocks some amount of the stun, and you have to get higher than the resistance. So if we have a 3 resistance, you'd have to get 6 total. You have to hit me 3 times with something like this, add up to 6 in order to overcome a 3. So that's the way kind of powers work. On this side, we have the inherent powers. When the game first came out, these were the only ones: Brawl and Sprint and Rest. Prestige Power Slide is something that came in later. There were these other pool powers, like Flight, that were originally you had to purchase with level ups. Now they come automatically, Inherent Fitness. And then also in this area, you can have what are called pool powers. Flight is an example. So the way this works is your best powers are your primary, the second best powers are your secondary, and the pool powers are the weakest powers. They can still be good, but they're just never going to be as good as a primary. So if you had a Flight in your primary, it would be way faster than Flight in a pool. Or if you have Punch in the pool, which there are several, it's going to be way weaker than a punch in your primary or your secondary. Now, there are also these little sockets here called enhancement slots. And you can put enhancements into the enhancement slots. So let's read what this says here. This is an endurance reduction. It reduces the amount of endurance cost on the power by 15%. This is a dual origin enhancement. So there are 3 types of enhancements. Single origin enhancements are for whatever your origin is. And you can only slot the ones for your origin. If we look at our character ID, you can see that her origin is natural, right? So she's a natural character. The other origins are mutation, magic, tech, okay? So those are the different types of origins. Single origin enhancements are the best, and they increase the power level by about 33%. Dual origin enhancements are ones that can be slotted in with people who have 2 origins, one of 2 origins. So this is a magic and mutation enhancement. This one is natural and magic. So if you're either natural or magic, you can slot it in. So more people can slot them in, but they're weaker. If we look at this one, it's only about half. Single origin buffs the powers, and certain types of single origins will buff the powers by 33%, so damage. It's a dual origin damage enhancement, only buff it by about 17%. And then there used to be one called the training enhancement that was about half as good as that. It would buff it by about 8%, and that was for any origin. So the more origins it can fit, the weaker it is. There are lots of other kinds of enhancements, but these are the basic ones that you get as drops from enemies, and also that you can purchase from the enhancement shops. When the game launched, the first 15 levels, I think, from levels 1 to 15, 1 to 10, there every 5 levels, you can buy enhancements. Let me take that back. They only sell enhancements in 5 level increments, right? So you can buy a level 5 training enhancements or 10 training enhancement or 15, 20, 25, 30. You couldn't buy dual origin enhancements until level 15, right? That was the first ones they sold in the shop. You also can only slot enhancements when they're within 3 levels of you. So you can see that we're 4th level. It looks white if it's your level. If it's below your level, it turns yellow. When it gets to 3 below your level, that's as low as you can use. So we're 4th level, we can use level 1 to 7 enhancements. When we hit 5th level, level 1 enhancements would turn red and no longer give you a bonus. And as you level up, the bonus decreases. So you can see this endurance reducer reduces by 16.7%. This one only by 15%. So enhancements get worse and then they expire. And so basically every 5 levels you have to buy new enhancements or slot new enhancements in. This upgrade button is something new to um, the Homecoming group, or relatively new. They did this a year or so ago, I think. Um, you can take the stuff that's slotted in and hit upgrade, and it'll just tell you how much influence it costs to upgrade, and then it'll just automatically upgrade everything. The old way to do it is you have to rip them all out and buy new ones and add them all in, and it's a pain in the neck. So we'll see how the upgrade button works as we go. Um, but the point is these things expire, and some are better than others. Normally, in the low levels, you'd be slotting in training enhancements. When you hit 12th level and above, you could then start dual origins. And then when you get to 22nd level, at that point, they start selling 25th level single origin, and you can start slotting in single origins. But in order to do that, you have to buy them with this game's version of money, which is called influence. We only have 6,000 influence. And if you look on the vendor, it costs a couple thousand influence to buy a dual origin. So it doesn't make sense to purchase now because we wouldn't be able to buy a lot of them anyway. So we're just going to use the things that drop and that are above our level because we can keep them around for a while. So this damage one, this is worth slotting in. We're going to go ahead and slot it. And this now means that, remember, we used to do 22 damage a shot, right? That's what it says in parentheses. We're now doing 30. We've dramatically increased our damage by 33%. All right, so now we will do more damage with the barrage punch. So hopefully that explains things, and then we'll kind of figure stuff out as we go. I talked about levels and con before. The way the game was designed when it first came out is that white cons are supposed to be an even threat level to you, but they also have different ranks, right? Over here we have the faction, and over here we have the rank. These guys are minions. And the way the game was designed was different from other MMOs. In other MMOs, a single enemy that was a white con was considered equal to you and a reasonable threat. In City of Heroes, they said, we want you to feel like a hero. So the way they did it is they spawned, instead of one guy at a time, they would spawn 3, usually. This was 2 because we're just on the street. But they would usually spawn 3 guys at a time. And 3 white conning minions, 3 minions of your level, was considered an even fight. A reasonable risk. You can safely attack them and they're probably not going to kill you. A yellow con is a little harder. That means be cautious. Now you're going to see we will have no trouble against yellow cons. A, because I know what I'm doing, and B, because they're just not that hard. And so 3 yellow con minions, or this guy was ranked a lieutenant. That's a little bit different. So he's my level, but he has a higher rank. So he's a little more dangerous. And you should only take lieutenants by themselves, or maybe with one white con helping them. And so... yeah, 1 white con minion by himself is no challenge at all. And if you see 3, you're probably fine. Now, there are variations to this because it depends on the faction. These guys are Hellions. They don't really do much. But say the Vahziloks, they actually do a lot of damage, and they can be extremely hard to fight when you're low level. So the cons go white is no problem. If they're weaker than you, 1 level below you is blue con minions. Those guys are easy. Green con is super easy. You get less and less experience as you fight the weaker cons. As you can see, the minions are 10 experience and 7 influence. The lieutenant was 33 experience and 33 influence, right? And if you fight higher level minions, you get more experience. If it's below a green con, when it gets to a gray con, you don't get any experience for that. We don't need, we're not getting levels. I'm supposed to be talking to the contact. Sorry. Too busy talking. So hopefully that explains a little bit of how this works. And we'll continue talking about that stuff as we go. We actually didn't need to come here, right? Because I have the telephone, but that's fine. We'll walk on in. So this is the first contact you get, and they give you missions until you're about 5th level, and then they send you to another contact. So this says the Skulls have made good progress in their efforts to move Superidine, which is a drug. I'd like you to patrol Atlas Park, or there's something I'd like you to take care of. Skulls of Kings Row are planning to spread Superidine drug to the streets of Atlas Park. I'd like you to... Okay, we're not going to Kings Row yet. So the reason I made that decision is, having played this game before, Yeah, King's Row is pretty high level for us. We're only 4th level, and everything in King's Row is 5th level and above. I don't feel like fighting red and purple cons, right? So the conning goes white, above that is yellow, then 2 levels above you is orange, 3 is red, 4 is purple. In higher levels, it's no problem at all to fight purple cons and red cons, but at low levels, you really, unless you're doing some kind of exploit or something like that, you really can't. And as you saw, and it didn't have any problem against yellows and whites, but once you get into reds and oranges, that can be a lot of trouble for low-level characters because you just don't have any defenses or attacks in yet. And I told this story a long time ago, but I'll tell it again since you have to go back and watch like the Silver Phoenix first 10 or 12 episodes, somewhere in there I told this story. But when I was first playing City of Heroes, I was playing a scrapper, and the other scrappers were on the forum, the game forum. We're talking about how as a scrapper you should be able to go and take out, red cons with no problem. And so I said, okay, I was like level 11, and I was in Steel Canyon, which is a level 10 to 20 zone, and I saw like 2 red con 5th column guys, I think, or maybe it was a lieutenant, I can't remember, but it was a red con. I went up to him and I attacked him, and I just got absolutely handed, my butt absolutely handed to me. I tried this 2 or 3 times, got absolutely crushed. And I went on the forum and I was like, I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. You guys say it's no problem to fight red cons, but I just got butchered in Steel Canyon by these 5th column guys. And one of the guys said, well, wait, Steel Canyon, what level are you? Level 10. He's like, no, 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 no. You can't fight red cons when you're level 10. We're like level 35. You can do that when you're high level. And so I fought mostly white and yellow cons. And then at 26th level, this is martial arts super reflex scrapper. At 26th level, I got Dragon's Tail, which is an AoE spin kick that knocks everybody down. At that point, it was making everybody go flying. It's a great crowd control because then they have to run back to fight you. And I was in Independence Port, which is a level, also a level 20 to 30 zone, and I was level 26, and I went to, there was like a ship, I think it was, that had like, I don't know, 12 or 15 Orange Con family just standing around. It was a big spawn. And I went in there and I just dove in and started fighting, and I wrecked them. And they had no chance against me. And I was like, okay, now I see what these guys were talking about. And that was only at level 26. But by then I had my single origin enhancements and I had my area effect attack. Now I guess we do have to go to King's Row. Oh no, she just wants us to go to Alice Park. Well, that's not so bad. I thought she was going to make us go to King's Row. So yeah, at level 4 you don't want to go to King's Row. There's nothing in there that's going to be your level. Most of the things are going to be 2 to 3 levels above you, orange and red cons. They will almost automatically hit you because they get a bonus against you as the level increases, right? So it's 50% chance for enemies to hit you when you're even to them, right? White cons or even level. But if they're like 2 levels above you, they've got like a plus 20 or 30%, plus 20, I guess, percent chance to hit you, and you have a minus 20% chance to hit them. So you go from a 75% chance to hit them down to 55, and they go from a 50 up to 70. You're going to get pounded. And we don't have any real defenses in. Look, as you can see when we come back, you'll see we only have 5% resistance to things, right? Now, it's nice that we have 5% resistance, but it's 5%. It's not 50%. Eventually, we will have something like 50% resistance to everything because we're going to get more and more defensive powers that are going to stack, and we'll be able to enhance our existing defensive powers. But until that happens, you could be potentially very vulnerable. And you can see this guy's shooting me. He's reducing my defense, that's my ability to dodge, by 20%. So it's giving them plus basically 19% chance to hit me. And by the way, this guy is an orange con. So I'm going to go ahead and use some inspirations here so that I can hit him. Right, this is actually a pretty tough battle, as you can see. Right, my health bar went down pretty far. He's got my defenses down pretty far, but he's not hurting my resistance. And he's shooting a gun at me, which is lethal type damage. I do have 5% resistance against that. So let's talk about inspirations. These are things that you can quickly use. Oh boy. They usually either instantaneously do things like increase your endurance or health, or they will give you a bit of a buff for a certain period of time. So this is, I think, about a minute, and it's giving us a 7% accuracy bonus, so we can hit more often, and this is giving us a 25% damage bonus. So we're doing more damage, and we are hitting more accurately. And by the way, that damage also stacks with the damage bonus here. So, whoops. So we're doing 30 damage plus 25% while this thing is going, right? Which would be like 38 damage. Now, if you want to wonder why am I not flying in here, flying uses a lot of endurance, and the flying ability is not meant for combat. There is a combat version called hover, and in the old days, when City of Heroes first launched, you couldn't take a movement power until level 6, and you had to take the first movement power before you opened the third movement. First 2 movement powers before you opened the third one. And so, I don't know if we're going to see it here. Yeah, we will. So you can see flight, you had to either take hover or air superiority first at level 6 plus, and then at level 14 you could take fly. And then afterburner would only be available, it was something different, but it would only be available at level 20. So that's been changed. They've taken those restrictions off. I don't know when they did that. I think it was before the game was mothballed. And so you can get flight right away, which helps you move around the city, but it's not combat flight. That's what hover is meant for. So eventually, we're going to go ahead and take hover for this character so that we can hover in combat. But since she's a melee character and not a ranged character, it's less important for her. And it's just actually, frankly, easier to stand on the ground and punch people than to try and fly around and punch them. At least for me. However, I will use it to go up inside missions if I need to. Sometimes the glowy things that you have to click on, right, we're looking for drug stashes, they hide them behind these, right, way over here. So it just helps you grab them. Takes a little bit of time to search through the box. And now we're going to go beat this girl up. The other thing is this is a brute. So there's a bar here that most characters don't have. It's called the Fury bar right now. Our Fury is 51. As the Fury goes up, our damage will go up. So keep an eye, right? This is doing 9 and 24 damage. That's doing 5 and 18 damage, right? So just keep an eye. Those numbers will go up as the Fury goes up. Fury is built up by being attacked and by doing attacks, right? By being aggressive. So the brute, with people who play brutes, right? What they're trying to do is, I'm not doing this now. We're low level and whatever. But when you're playing a brute, usually what you're trying to do is very quickly go from battle to battle, because as soon as you stop fighting, your Fury bar drops, and therefore your damage drops. So you get better as you get attacked. And you can see that we can go from taking 3 or 4 blows to knock an enemy down to a single shot if your Fury bar is all the way up. So things like searching around for glowing objects, we call these glowies in City of Heroes. Players of brutes hate that because it's making my Fury bar go down. And what I really want to do is be just fighting, 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 and fighting. That's the most effective way to be a brute. Actually, I missed something over there, so let's go get it. So there are 2 quest objectives. One is to find all of the boxes, and the other is to defeat all of the enemies, defeat all skulls. So this one's hiding here. You may also be able to hear, I'm not sure if you can, there's a little bit of a hum. They didn't used to have that hum. First, there was no sound, and when people were frustrated they couldn't find the boxes, they had like almost like a little whistly noise. It was like doo-doo-dee, doo-doo-doo-dee. It almost sounded like the Twilight Zone, very soft. And then they changed it to the that they have now. And also then they added this thing, when there's only one left, they put a little white asterisk on the map, because it can be frustrating to players to, where is that last one? And if you notice, they've also got a little red arrow where the last spawn was, so that I could find it. Now this was a small warehouse, so it would not be hard to find it. But if it was a really big mission with multiple levels, and they do have those, sometimes it can be really hard to find that spawn that was like patrolling the hallway and you went the other way and you didn't see him and you think you've cleared the lair out and you haven't. All right, so we have done all the missions for this contact. We have no other possible contacts, although we do have a tip we can investigate. But we're very close to hitting 5th level. So let's go ahead and beat this guy up. This might level us. This is a lieutenant. He's a blue con. So he's a level below. He's 2 levels below me. But he cons is 1 level below because he's a lieutenant and he's tougher, although he's not very tough since he's a blue con and he's lower level than we are. How many more XP do we need? So let's just hover over. It'll tell you. We need 33? 23. A single yellow con lieutenant should do it for us if we can find one. But I don't know if we'll find one too easily. Let's head over this way. I think they're a little higher level over here where Argosy is. Nope, worse. So blue con. Well, the blue con is 20 XP, right? So we can beat 2 of these guys up and that should do it. By the way, as a brute, you can, like, it doesn't matter what con the enemies are, so you can basically charge up your fury on anybody, including these guys that are no threat to you, if you want, and then go fight a bad guy when you've got your fury bar up. We've now leveled up. You can see it gives you a whole bunch of buffs. We don't really need them right now, but it gives you a whole bunch of buffs, so sometimes it's fun to do that inside missions, because then you can really run rampant in the mission for, what, a minute or so? I think that's about how long it lasts. 60 seconds, yep. So this is, guys, kind of the end of Atlas Park for us, because once you hit this level, there are contacts in King's Row, which is the level 5 to 10 area. So every other level you can add 2 slots to your powers. Remember last time I was talking about this, I don't know yet whether health and stamina will auto slot. I'm just going to leave them alone. You don't need them. You don't need to put anything in them until you get to level 22, and you can slot in the level 25 single origin enhancements. So what I'm going to do is I'll wait till level 19. If these haven't had any extra slots, then it doesn't auto slot, and I'll add 2 to health and 2 to stamina at levels 19 and 21. But for now, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to call this finishing this power. So let me explain. Enhancements only increase this amount until you have 3 in a row, and then the 4th one does dramatically reduced diminishing returns. So for something like high pain tolerance, which is an auto power and doesn't cost any endurance, we probably don't need more than 3 slots, but it does, if we look at this, it does increase your hit points. So at some point we may want to actually 6 slot this. 6 is the maximum number of slots. But for now we'll consider this power basically done, and we'll add a slot to Energy Punch. These guys are going to get all 6 slots because you can always use 6 slots on attack powers. So now you can see we're going to get some new contacts, I think. Twin Shot is 1. And that's it. Does Susan Davies have another contact? Yes. So she's going to introduce me to another contact, and that is Vic Johansson in King's Row. Then we go to King's Row, we will get an automatic contact there. Shannon Stockwell or something, and she was newly added, and that does the Superidine Ring or whatever. We will do that story arc, but I think you can't start it until level 6 or 7. So the thing with City of Heroes is they do have a bunch of story arcs, but the way the game was designed, you don't get on real story arcs, which have parts to them, and they leave like clues in here and eventually souvenirs, which is the story of the arc. Those things don't really come in until 7th or 8th level, because here you're just essentially doing a tutorial. So there's Shauna Stockwell. And I don't think she's going to give us a mission, but let's see. Nope, so she doesn't give us a mission yet. You can buy things from her, such as inspirations. I think you can sell to her. Can you sell to her? Okay. My guess is she doesn't give you a great price, but I'm not that worried about it. Somebody just buffed me with thermal shield. So the only actual contact we have here that we can use is Vic. There's also Detective Becktrees. Um, let's actually go to Detective Becktrees because he can give us missions that will eventually give us the police scanner, and those are repeatable missions that you can play. And when you build up enough rep with the police, then they send you on to stop a bank robbery, and it's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and oh man, this is really bringing back some memories for me because at one point in the original server I was playing Liberty Lass as a fire invuln, I think. So she had some fire abilities. Of course, she doesn't here. So let's talk to Detective Becktrees. And so he's got a police scanner. So we now have in the contacts the police scanner, and that will give us missions as well. Which way did I come in here? I always get lost in this stupid police station. Okay, let's go ahead and talk to Vic. Because Vic will give us the regular King's Row missions, and then we also do want to talk to the detective. So one of the things that has happened, I'm not sure exactly how they do it now on Homecoming, but I'm pretty sure this is true on Rebirth, and I think it's true on Homecoming as well. In order to get other contacts in the zone besides the first one or two they give you, you have to do these missions enough, and then after you get like a progress bar built up with them, it will, with him, he will give you a new contact, right? So you have to do several missions for him to build the progress bar. But we're going to start with Vic. Vic is right here. Hey there, Vic. So available missions. He gives us two choices. We've been seeing a lot of violence in King's Row. I need you to go stop the lost, or please find the missing homeless people. Let's go for the missing homeless people. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. Darn it. We can get rid of that. Hang on. I didn't mean to do that. Alright, so let's abandon it. And try again. I clicked the wrong thing. We want to do the homeless people. So this is going to be the Vahziloks. These guys are very tough, especially when you don't have a lot of defenses. However, I do think they're not resistant to the energy part of the energy melee. So some chunk of this power does smashing damage. Let's take a look at the combat and maybe we can see it. Some part of our hit does smashing and some part of it does energy. I think the bulk of it is smashing. So when you see two numbers and it's like 9 and 24, I think it's 24 smashing, 9 energy. But I could be wrong. So let's check it and we'll see what it says. Yeah, we don't want to fight those guys. They're purples. They would kill me really fast. At some point, I'm going to have to stop using sprint because it will drain too much endurance from me. But right now, with no defense powers that cost endurance, it's not so bad. Oh, you know what? I really look at this salvage. There is a way. I always forget to do that. There is a way to get like the Nemesis staff and stuff. I always forget to do that because they didn't have it in the original game. Even though I've played on the bootleg servers for years, I always forget to do that. So there are these ranged attacks and melee attacks that you can get for free that you can add into your attack cycle. I don't know whether we want to do that. All right, so hang on. Let's do this punch here and see what we got. All right, so let's take a look. You hit the Headman Sword with Energy Punch for 23 points of energy damage and 9 points. So we're doing primarily energy. That's actually really good because Smashing is one of the most resisted energy types, damage types in the game, and energy is not. Oh boy. All right, these guys are orange, so we're going to need some. We're going to need, again, definitely against the lieutenant there, we're going to need some buffs. So inspirations, I started talking about them and then I forgot to keep going. So these things drop pretty regularly from enemies. Minions have, I don't quote me on this, but I think minions have about a 25% chance of dropping an inspiration, and lieutenants have about a 50%. So you can see we just had one drop. So it's okay to go ahead and use them because you will get more, and there's really no reason to hoard them. Usually, I either don't need them or just forget to use them. I also have a preferred suite of inspirations, which you get more and more boxes of these as you level up. So when we hit 10th level, there will be 2 rows of 5, and when I have that, I usually like to have a column of to hit, which is the yellow ones, a column of damage, a column of defense, which is purple or orange, a column of endurance, and a column of health. That's kind of the typical, I don't know what you want to call it, kit of inspirations that I run with when I'm playing a melee character such as a brute or a scrapper or a stalker. Um, if I'm playing other kinds of characters, I may run with other things. So, for example, if you're playing a blaster and they don't have defense against secondary attack, secondary effects such as stun and disorient, then I will often carry a break free or two. These are things that protect you from stun or will help you get unstunned. Now, this character right now has absolutely no defense against stuns, so maybe I should carry a break free, and they don't tend to drop as often. But eventually, willpower does give you a defensive toggle, I think, that protects you against so-called mez or mesmerizing attacks such as stuns, knockdowns, knockbacks, and so on. So for now, they can still knock me down. They can still stun me, and that sword does have a potential stun on it. And you see we have no hold protection. But the reason I have that number up there is that I know that eventually we will get hold protection, because that's what happens in a brute. All brutes, as far as I know, all the brute secondary power sets have some kind of a mesmerization defense. Alright, so we're going to have to lead this guy out. Now, I know there's another guy right there, but we're going to go ahead and lead him out because we will be ambushed. And I don't want to get caught in the middle of a battle or get caught in and then be ambushed, or get caught in 2 ambushes at once. Although, my guess is with this character we probably could handle it. I tend to be very cautious, especially at lower levels. You don't have to be, because, after all, if your character actually face plants, all you do is go to the hospital, and then you can fly back to the mission. Especially with flight, it's not that big of a deal. Come on. These guys tend to get lost, so you got to be careful with them. The worst is if they despawn. Hopefully they've fixed that. But there used to be an issue where it would despawn and then you couldn't finish the mission. That, by the way, is why there is an option with contacts every 3 days. You can, and there's the ambush that missed us. Every 3 days you can call your contact and say, just autocomplete the mission for me. And the reason they do that is because sometimes missions, because of bugs, cannot be completed. So there's a Mez. He knocked me down. And the problem, of course, with that is that while you're on the ground, you cannot attack, and you're vulnerable. You can see my chance to hit is 86% now, compared with 89% when we were 2nd level. It goes down a little bit each level. There's another knockdown. Go ahead and heal up. Now, it's really good that Energy Melee's primary attack type or damage type is energy, because that's not going to be resisted anywhere near as much as smashing. It's one of the reasons why I don't like super strength, and lots of people complained about it over the years, that because smashing is so commonly a resisted damage type, super strength seems very underwhelming because you're punching things, you're not doing anything to them. Whereas if you're using energy melee, you're punching things and you are doing stuff to them, because most things don't have energy defenses, energy resistance. it's way less likely to be resisted. Now, I keep using these orange drops, so here's what I'm doing, guys. Like I said, I do have a preferred suite, a kit, if as it were, of inspirations. And what I tend to do is if one's dropped that aren't part of what I want, I just use them. Because again, there are going to be more coming. You see, we just got another one. Right, so I've been using them pretty liberally, and the box is full. So with 8 boxes, four columns of 2, this is the kit that I usually run with: 2 defense, 1 each of offensive, accuracy, and damage, and then 2 endurance and 2 health. I probably don't need the 2 endurance at this level, because as you can see, we're not generally running out of endurance. So what I really ought to do is have like 1 and 1 of the heal and the endurance, and then 2 of each of these or something to be more aggressive as a brute. But this is what I'm really used to doing, and so I just tend to stick with what I know. So this gray attack here, this is just brawl. All it does is a little bit of smashing damage. You see it just did 9 damage. Compared to, say, when we punch with this thing, we did 5 and 15, right? And 9 and 22. So there's 1 more hostage to lead out after this guy. Yeah, realistically, you may as well turn off sprint when you're leading them out, because they don't run very fast, and they will get caught up on corners and other parts of the 3-dimensional environment. The AI is not very good. And I'm going to try not to talk about it too much, but anybody who's watched my older videos knows I absolutely detest what I call the lead out missions, the escort missions. But I tend to call them lead out rather than escort, not because I don't know what the term is. I know they're called escort missions. The reason I call them lead out missions is because the escorting is not the challenge. You saw that. I just beat up the ambush really easily. The ambushes don't do anything to you. They're absolutely no risk. They can't actually kill. In most of these missions, they can't actually kill the NPC. There are a few, like General Z, who can be killed. It tends not to matter that they were, but it feels like a failure when they do get killed. But these NPCs cannot be. They're completely invulnerable. And so if you got defeated, they would just stand there and wait until you came back from the hospital and led them. So the challenge of these quote-unquote escort missions isn't escorting or beating up the patrols. It's leading the NPC out and them actually not getting lost, right? I use the term sarcastically, because I find it to be a ridiculous challenge to lead an NPC out through a whole bunch of empty space. Oftentimes there isn't even an ambush, or the ambush happens, you're in a 4-level, building, and you got to go through 4 different levels with elevators in different places, so you can't just press the elevator and go down 4 floors. You'll see that when we get into some office buildings. And the enemies come and ambush you on the 4th floor, and then you go down to 3, 2, 1. All you're doing is just going through a bunch of space, and you're not actually doing anything interesting. And that's why I kind of object to these types of missions, and it's why I call them lead out missions rather than escort missions. I often confuse people, though, because I get so used to calling them lead out missions that, like, when I talk to my friends from my old supergroup and stuff, and I would say, I hate lead out missions. Like, oh, you mean escort missions? Yeah, the ones where you lead NPCs out. Yeah, those are called escort missions. Yeah, I know. But I call them lead out missions, because the thing that annoys me isn't the escorting, it's the leading out. And it's mostly just because of the bad AI, right? From inability to navigate the terrain. Now, these are actually an addition, because in the original launch, what would happen is this mission was in there. These guys would just disappear if you rescued them, right? Okay, it's rescued. They would just thank you very much, and the assumption was they'll go out by themselves. And then to try to make the game more sort of fun and interesting and dynamic and whatever you want to call it, they said, well, what if you have to lead them out, right? What if you have to escort them out? And the original way it was characterized is that you have to escort these characters out through a hail of bullets and protect them. And that sounded really fun. Unfortunately, the way they implemented it was a bunch of brain dead ambush spawns like this that aren't going to attack the enemy. They're going to attack me. So I don't really have to protect her. And we're going to just fight this one couple of guys that aren't any harder than any of the other guys we fought. And then walk through this whole map with nothing else to do but just lead an NPC who's not able to follow us. And the challenge is just navigate the map. That was pretty disappointing. And that's one of the reasons I don't tend to like missions that have this. But I won't. I've now explained it. We won't get into it too much. In the past, I've been very whiny about it because I don't like it. But that's it. I'm done. We won't say anymore. So we've now completed half of level 5. We will not level up at the end of this mission. But one thing you should notice is that completing missions does lead to a nice hefty sum of XP. If you look, we get 13 XP per minion and 43 per lieutenant. And we get influence, by the way, too. So what do we have? About 6,000 when we started. We now have 16,000 influence. Some of that's from selling stuff, but most of that's just from all the bad guys we've beaten up and from completing missions, because you get some good influence and good XP from completing missions. So keep an eye. 13 XP for defeating a single minion. How many XP for completing a mission? 50, right? So it's equivalent of defeating 4 minions, or a minion and a lieutenant. And the reason they do that is years ago when the game first launched, there was no bonus XP for completing missions. You just got a mission complete. And people said, why are we completing missions? They were just going onto the street sweeping, because they said it's actually faster to gain XP to go into a hazard zone and there's spawns everywhere and you just beat them up, instead of having to escort somebody out or find a boss or whatever. So the developer said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to give you mission ending, like bonus XP for completing a mission, and make it worth doing missions, right? Because doing that mission is worth more than a spawn, and as you get higher level it becomes even more worth it. So that if you want to max out your XP gain per real life minute, you would definitely be doing missions, right? It was faster, except in certain circumstances, it was faster than just street sweeping, as they called it. Circle of Thorns. So this seems to be a change. It's daylight out, and what used to happen is you'd have to fight the Circle of Thorns, and they'd be really hard to find because they'd be doing crap to victims, like rituals and stuff, on rooftops, but only at night. And so I remember this friend of mine, we were hunting Circle of Thorns, and we were like, oh god, we got to do it at night. And it was rooftops, and my character had combat jumping, so I couldn't get up to the roofs. I was like trying to find my way up the freaking escape ramps here, right? The fire escapes, to try and get up there, but they don't always connect all the way to the roof. And I remember my best friend he didn't have flight, he had hover. And I remember him like just slowly hovering up and going, oh, there's some up here. And then we were trying to figure out, how do I get up there to help him, because he couldn't take them by himself. He was a blaster and he had no defense. We got a contact here, so let's do Tony Cord. That doesn't really matter. And let's see, how are we doing on enhancements? We've got a few drops. This is a recharge, and it is tech and natural, so it is worth it. Well, let's go ahead and put that in Energy Punch, and that will change the Energy Punch to recharge in 4.29 seconds instead of 5 seconds. Now, the rest of these are not natural enhancers, so we can go ahead and sell them. Probably the easiest place to do that will be the train station, which is where? Where's Freedom Plaza? Over there. There's Wentworth's. So that's where you can buy enhancement sets. So other than training, single, and dual origin enhancements, enhancement sets are special ones where if you get a whole set, they give you extra bonuses. We're not going to worry about that until we get into our 30s. And we're only level 5. Oops, cut that off too fast. Oh, the other thing I want to point out, what you'll notice when I stop I always stop in like around train stations and stuff. The reason is we got these police drones. The police drones will automatically protect you if any villains come along. They'll just delete them. They just vanish. And there we go. So here you can see the sale prices, about 2,000, 1,000 each, for dual origin enhancers of level 5, right? And then if we went into Steel Canyon or something, they'd offer level 10s to us. And I don't know if they'd show me the level 10 until I'm like level 7. Not really sure. But since we're already level 5 and these enhancements would expire by level 8, we're not going to bother buying them. To me, it's not worth it. We've leveled so fast, every half hour or so, every hour you're going to level. To me, it's not worth it to buy them. I'm willing to slot them in when they're free, right? But I'm not going to purchase them. All right, folks, I hope you have enjoyed, and hopefully, I know it was a little disjointed, but hopefully I've given some information to those of you who may be new to City of Heroes. And until next time, I am Scarpalock, and this has been City of Heroes on the Homecoming server Everlasting.